Add hydraulic oil. Choose suitable anti-wear hydraulic oil based on the ambient temperature. It is recommended to use 46H anti-wear hydraulic oil under normal conditions. The general amount of oil to be added is 80% to 90% of the tank capacity. Connect the foot pedal switch connector. Align the bayonet position of the aviation connector, connect it, and tighten the nuts of the aviation connector. Connect the power cable. Choose the appropriate connecting cable based on the total power of the machine. Connect the 3-phase wires to the power switch of the machine electrical cabinet. Please turn on the power switch of the electrical cabinet. Please check the emergency stop buttons of the machine to ensure that all of them are turned on. Please start the oil pump by pressing the Start button on the screen, and immediately press the emergency stop button. Observe the direction of the main motor to ensure that it rotates clockwise. Please refer to the direction indication sticker on the motor for the correct rotation direction. If the motor is rotating counterclockwise, you will need to swap 2 of the 3-phase power lines and then confirm the motor rotation direction again. Horizontal adjustment of machine. Measuring the horizontal accuracy of the position of the machine's worktable using a spirit level. Adjust the horizontal accuracy by adjusting the bolts at the machine's base plate. Place a steel plate underneath the adjusting bolts to ensure stability during the adjustment process. T8 System Interface Function Introduction. The start and stop buttons for the oil pump. Press and hold for 3 seconds to start the machine motor. Click again to stop the machine motor. The mold selection and editing buttons. You can edit the mold library based on the actual molds and select the corresponding upper mold during actual operation. The lower mold V-groove selection and editing buttons. You can edit the mold library based on the actual V-groove sizes and select the corresponding V-groove during actual operation. Plate thickness selection button. Measure the actual thickness of the processed board and input it. Board length selection button. Measure the actual length of the processed board and input it. Bending angle and value toggle button. Switch between displaying the bending angle directly and displaying the y-axis value. Normally, using the bending angle display is sufficient. Bending angle setting button. Enter the desired bending angle. Angle correction button. When the measured angle after bending is close to the set angle, use this function for angle correction. For example, if the bending angle is set to 90 degrees and the actual measured angle is 91.5 degrees, click the angle correction button and enter -1.5, then press the start button to proceed. X-axis setting button. Enter the desired X-axis value to control the position of the stop gauge. Clicking on the icon can switch between internal dimensions and external dimensions. X-axis value compensation function. When the X-axis value deviation is small, you can enter the difference value to compensate for it. Slider up button. Controls the slider to return to the upper dead position. Lighting button. Used to turn on and off the lighting. Start button. Used to initiate the execution of a programmed sequence. During the running process, it will display stop, and once the process is completed, it will display OK. Additional editing button. Click to access the editing interface for more functions. Material selection function for boards. You can input the corresponding strength according to the different strengths of the boards. Pressure delay time function. It is used to control the pressurization time during the bending process. The normal setting is around 3.0 to 5.0. It can be adjusted according to the actual situation. X-axis back gauge retraction distance function. Set the retraction distance of the X-axis back gauge. When there is interference between the workpiece and the back gauge during bending of special workpieces, you can set a retraction distance to avoid interference. Normally, set it to 0 during operation. Retreat delay time function, used in conjunction with retreat distance. It avoids factors such as the retreat program starting too early that may affect the material. When operating normally, set it to 0. Machine working mode selection. 1. Inch mode, operated by a foot pedal switch. The machine will stop at any position when pressed downward and will not return. This mode is commonly used for normal operation. 2. Single cycle mode. Operated by a foot pedal switch, it can complete a set of actions including rapid descent, slow descent, and pressure. However, if you release the foot pedal switch midway, the ram will immediately stop and return. 3. Continuous mode. Controlled by programming. It can perform the entire sequence of actions in a continuous loop for demonstration purposes. This mode is normally used for testing operations and is not recommended for regular production purposes. Edit function. When you click on the edit function, there are 3 options available. 1. Current program. 2. Manual adjustment. And 3. Parameter settings. Choose Current Program to return to the current program interface. Select Manual Adjustment to enter the manual interface. In this interface, you can manually adjust and move the values of the x-axis and y-axis. When the set value and the measured value are inconsistent or there is a large error, it is necessary to enter this interface for adjustment and change the current value. Password is required to enter. Enter the parameter setting interface. The main settings include the machine tool operating mode, 3 options: jog, single, continuous. You can also choose the system display language: Chinese, English, Spanish. The option to add a new step in the programming process appears when you press Next Step. It allows for multi-step programming. To select and edit the upper mold, measure the actual height of the upper mold and compare it to ensure the correct selection of the upper mold. How to select and edit molds. Editing molds. Measure the actual dimensions of the mold and input the measurements. Mold editing instructions. H. Height of the mold. V. Numerical value of the size of the V-groove. R. Size of the chamfer of the V-groove, typically set at 0.3-0.5. Alpha. Angle of the V-groove. For a 90 degrees groove, it is normally set at 86 degrees. How to choose the V-groove for the lower mold. Normally, it should be 8 times the thickness of the processed sheet. For example, if the measured thickness of the sheet is 1 mm, we would choose a groove width of 8 mm. Changing the V-groove for the lower mold. Once the V-groove is selected in the system, the actual mold V-groove needs to match the selected V-groove in the system. First, loosen the left and right fixing screws on both sides of the mold to ensure there is no interference during the rotation of the lower mold. Then lower the slide block and use a specialized tool to lift and flip the lower mold, flipping it to the plane where the V-groove is located for replacement. Next, align the desired V-groove with the center of the upper mold by adjusting the left and right screws on both sides. While making these adjustments, you can slowly lower the upper blade. Angle testing and calibration. Taking a 1 mm thick iron plate as an example. Enter the material information into the system and select an 8 mm V-groove. Input the angle of 90 degrees and press the start button. Bending test. Step on the foot switch, and the slider will descend to bend the sheet metal. Ensure that the pressurization action is fully completed. Measure the actual bending angle. The measured value is 113 degrees, which is significantly different from the set value of 90 degrees. Angle calibration SAT face. To manually adjust the interface and select the Y-axis, click on the current value and enter the password 0313. Modify the current value of the Y-axis by adding a value on top of the current value if the angle is greater than the set value. Return to the main interface and press the start button to run. Continue testing and measure the angle. Testing and calibration of the X-axis. Measure the dimensions of the object and calculate the error value. Manually select the X-axis on the interface. Modify the current value of the X-axis. Enter the password 0313. Add the error value to the current value, and return to the main interface to run. Sample programming bending process explained. 1. Plan the bending sequence based on the required processed workpiece drawing. 2. Input the sheet metal information and select the upper and lower die V-groove. 3. Start editing the program and input the bending machine angle and X-axis value for each step. 4. Press start to run the program. 5. Bending test. After each bending step, measure and check the actual values against the drawing dimensions for any errors. If there are any discrepancies, inspect the program settings and consider adding compensation values. Continue making adjustments until the measurements match the drawing dimensions exactly. Once the program is fully aligned, save it. How to adjust the angle error on both sides of the bent workpiece. Example. After bending, measure the angles of the left and right sides of the workpiece to be 91 degrees and 93 degrees respectively. There is a 2 degrees error between the left and right sides. When this happens, the first step is to adjust the angle to be consistent on the left and right. There is a synchronized shaft connecting the two cylinders on the back of the slide block of the machine tool. Remove the connecting sleeve in the middle of the synchronization shaft and separate the synchronization shaft. Turn the synchronizing shaft on the other side clockwise about 5 turns. Then connect the synchronized axis and test again. Repeat the above actions until the left and right angles are completely consistent. Machine pressure adjustment. Install a remote pressure regulating valve on the left side of the machine tool. Used for system pressure adjustment of machine tools. First loosen the locking nut of the pressure regulating valve, and then turn it clockwise. At this time, the pressure of the pressure gauge will increase. It must be adjusted while pressurizing, and the adjustment will be invalid when there is no pressure in the system. Introduction to common alarms. Oil pump not started. The oil pump does not start. Press the start button to release. Not at top. Alarm for not at the top part. All operational adjustments must keep the machine tool slider at the uppermost position. Otherwise it cannot be operated. Press the screen up key and move the slider up to the uppermost point to cancel the alarm. Servo alarm. When the resistance of x-axis and y-axis is large, an alarm will appear. Stop running immediately after an alarm occurs and check whether the mechanical part is stuck. When modifying the current value of the y-axis, it needs to be changed by a professional operator. If you don't understand, you can consult the
9高
manufacturer. Machine electrical monitoring page. The real-time picture of electrical appliance action monitoring can be used as a diagnostic reference.